Good morning, everyone, and welcome to day 3 of Epsilon 2021. I am Natika Mhatre, ISV representative at IEEE SIS GST, and your host for today's fantastic session. Each day, we have received an overwhelming response from everyone, and our team is grateful for it. Also, a reminder that everyone can submit their project by 5 p.m. today. So, hurry up, guys. As for today, we are going to have a panel discussion with our esteemed panelists. It is going to be extensive, educational, entertaining, and engrossing for everyone. Do let us know in the comment section about your point of views on today's topic, privacy in ML and war of data. We'll also shine some lights in the future of AI. So hold on to your seats tight and here as I introduce the panel members for today. Our first member is Mr. Siddharth Sahni. Siddharth Sahni is the ML scientist at Shipments and lead the product GoalEX.ai. He went to SRM University for his BTech in computer science and was in a research collaboration at RISE Lab at IIT Madras. He was also the gold medalist and best outgoing student in 2016. Siddharth happens to have worked in EdTech, legal tech, and flight tech domain and built AI products and teams right from scratch. He has been conferred the IET Trendsetter of the Year award year on year for his impressive performance throughout his journey. He also mentors young talent through different forums, talks, and workshops, and is lauded in the community for his contribution to AI. We are really honored to have you, sir.
Thank you.
Next, we have Mr. Ashish Pal. Ashish Pal is a data scientist by profession and an entrepreneur by heart. He is an excellent AI, ML consultant and mentor. He is also passionate about technology and especially robotics and artificial intelligence. He has experience in retail, healthcare, and education domain and worked with some great organizations and people and contributed significantly to their growth. Thank you, sir, for joining us today. Next, we have our moderator for this session, Mr. Eben Vargas. Eben Vargas works as a junior data scientist in the ETA department at Infosys. He has rich experience in training corporate employees on different paradigms of AI. He is really interested in private AI, ML, NLP, and deep learning. Now, I would like to welcome everyone on behalf of IEEE SIS GST. And Mr. Eben, I'd like you to carry forward this session from here onwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Nitika, for this wonderful introduction. So before I actually begin, I just want to extend a warm welcome to all the panelists and all the audience that have decided to join us today. And I'm really happy to be here. So yeah, so today I guess we'll be focusing more on the privacy of AI and the future of AI, right? I mean, that's what we are here for. I mean, all of you young guys are here, right? So yeah, so before we begin, folks, I mean, panelists, is there anything that you would want to speak up? I mean, kick off, something like that?
Yeah, maybe looking forward to hearing everyone's thoughts and take on how we advance in making more responsible, fair artificial intelligence systems and make it more democratized and help enlighten the industrial experience that we have gotten to the new grads entering this space. And yeah, looking forward to a healthy discussion.
Yeah, so thanks first of all for inviting us and providing this platform to share our views. And above all, I'll say there's a lot of things has happened in past 4 5 years, and how the whole data science and AI community itself has changed and has become a kind of trendsetter. And especially looking for the young people who are kind of very much enthusiastic at the same time looking for the right path where they can use their skills and talent to like shape up the future of the AI. So looking forward for some great work in the future.
Okay, well, very well done. So I guess we can start. So before we start, I guess it is the perfect time to talk about something that we all are really caring about, right? So this which is like very close to our hearts, and that is like privacy in AI, right? I mean, so in the wake of the dawn of latest news that some tech companies are, I mean, we don't really know what they're doing, but it appears to us that as if there's some sort of data espionage. Um, so basically, my question, I mean, so to kick off this today's conference, I would like to ask you, what kind of techniques do we look on as professionals in this particular field, as engineers, as developers, as data scientists, researchers, so that we can sort of employ these techniques to preserve the privacy of the users. So a couple of things come to my mind, like differential privacy, federated learning. So, folks, what are your thoughts?
Um, yeah, I can take a look. So I'd say, like, to begin with, how these companies are getting into the data espionage kind of a scenario is because we exactly are sharing our data, and by sharing, I mean, like, I'll define sharing in two words, like giving plus trust. We are putting trust in them that, hey, this is the interactions that we are going to make on your system, and uh, based on that, you can use whatever data you want to, and build on top of it, right? So they are giving all of those services for free in return for the actions or inputs that we are giving by using those platforms or services or tools. All right. And it becomes mission critical for us to now understand the implications that it can have in our day-to-day lives when it comes to privacy preserving machine learning, right? And as data scientists, as researchers, as independent programmers, as folks contributing and shaping the foundations of what is there and what it is going to impact in the near future, we need to definitely think upon the techniques that we should use or incorporate to make this happen. So yeah, I would like to talk about one of them being one of the ways in which people could attack or could get to your security and privacy of machine learning is by observing the training parameters, if not the actual data. So there are methods by which, if you have your models hosted entirely, you could hit those APIs, and you could, uh, if you are publishing a model with all the trained parameters, you can reverse engineer the entire model architecture and get to understand why is a particular way, why is a particular input happening in a particular direction. So on that note, I would say the typical tools that one should employ, as you rightly mentioned, Abhin, are amongst federated learning, differential privacy. One of the other key things that we typically take care of is like encryption. Primarily, there are and have been methods by which we can encrypt the training data. We can train on the encrypted data, as well as whenever the inputs are coming in, we can perform predictions on the form of an encrypted data, kind of a thing. So that's one thing that I would say is key, that can prevent any hackers, any reverse decryption techniques to go away, and this homomorphic encryption is taking the norm. And then there is also another method that we typically employ at shipments. Also, is a concept called trusted execution environments. So with that, I mean being able to deploy machine learning models at scale in the environments that we are typically aware that they can be trusted on, with the model hosting capabilities, the model serving capabilities. So having such cloud providers, even that trusted environment can be on your own, but having such things can help. So one I would say is encryption. The other one I'd say is uh, TEs that have taken the field. I'll talk in more. I would like to hear more of your thoughts also by then.
Okay. First of all, yeah, thanks, Bhagar. He has already talked about a lot of different things, but I like to start with from understand from where the data is coming. Like there's a different form of data, and the thing is how the data companies are capturing is totally different. There are implicit ways of capturing the data, there are explicit way where they capture the data, where user provide the details about what might be the details about them or what their interest lies in. Like we see the surveys or the explicit way of getting the ratings, and there are different ways we get that. And there are some ways that implicitly where you are in that their system, they capture a lot of things which we do not know even about, like, or we are not even aware about that they are even monitoring that kind of level of things. Like we have seen these things in apps, like nowadays we have how the Google marketing and Facebook marketing, everything we see around that has been revolved about how implicit way of they are tracking us to the levels where they can have a better access about us. They know us in many ways. So it's becoming a crucial for privacy, especially the privacy in the technology part where the machine learning and AI is taking a decision on the behalf of on the human. So human is not taking a decision, right? It's a very crucial part. And especially as I talk about, I've been closely working in a lot of healthcare and tech startups. So healthcare is a very crucial field where a lot of information is there, which is very crucial for the public. And in a way, you cannot be like you cannot take a risk of even losing a single piece of information on that front. And each uh, data point is very crucial in that term. So as you talk about the technologies which we are going to use, is one of the biggest is the predictive learning itself. We are not taking the model, we are not taking the data and here and there in the systems, because if you look at how the workflows is, right, you just think right now if you're just going for a COVID test or maybe any kind of normal test you are going, and maybe at the advanced level like MRI scan or those kinds of. If you are going at different locations, the data could be residing in 10 different radiology, 10 different hospitals out there, right? And if you try to use it from a central location, especially in India right now, maybe with US and UK, they have maybe better infrastructure in the way they handle this data, but still India needs to have a kind of better centralized way. So we can't create a kind of thing where every like new startup wants to get this data and everyone will try to get the data into their system. Right? So it's a very risky job. So the better way is that one of the best technology I think is predictive learning, where you take the ownership of your whatever the model is there, you get those model out there and there gets trained on their in-house data, and then you get the inference out of it. Obviously, you will have to trade off between the kind of accuracy and the precision you are getting, but in the overall, you'll be longer and you'll be able to make it kind of a more, you can say, robust way of working. Otherwise, it would be a very issue. And one another technology or the way we use is more like a consent management. Like whenever you are taking a data, like how we have this consent. But in healthcare, it's very crucial to get consent from the patients, whatever data you are going to access it. Especially with the hospitals, also they take the consent that okay, what kind of data is there and how much information it's going to be used. So all those things are very crucial, and this data is also now the social media platforms also have this similar kind of data which do have some amount of information about your health related issues or maybe your very personal issues. So in a way people can use those data, and it happens sometimes for even for the interest of some of this marketing and the product selling. There are lot of platforms where the data is distributed. So it's a very difficult task to put first of all the privacy. But yeah, I think we are moving into the good direction where we are talking about fair AI and privacy part and the technologies where we are very much focusing on the data part, not only on the like creating models and only AI application. Data part is becoming more crucial.
Okay, that's really cool. So for folks who were wondering, hey man, what is federated learning? So let me give a very brief introduction. What federated learning is. So the classical machine learning. So far, most of the part, what companies do is that if I'm the user and there's a data scientist in the company, so the data scientist will require my data to operate on, right? So to predict and do some analysis. So they would require, so they will take the data from me, from your phones, from your devices, whatever it is. The data will go to the server, and the data scientist will sort of work on the data and will try to make will try to do analysis and try to make predictions, and will will give back the the updated model. But in federated learning, it's actually quite the opposite. So we know for machine learning for machines to learn, it really doesn't matter where you, I mean, where do you, I mean, all that really matters is the union of the data and the model. So instead of pulling the data from your device to the server, the data will in federated learning, the data will remain in your device. The model from the server will be downloaded onto your device. All the updates will be done, and it will and a focused update will go back to the server, and from where the the data scientist can do analysis and do some prediction and make the model better. So that way data never leaves your device, so that way your data stays with you, my data stays with me. So that was federated learning, and to be honest, it's like one of the emerging things in machine learning, which I'm really excited about, personally at least. So I guess, and it was really cool. I mean, to know your thoughts on. You mentioned homomorphic encryption. Also, it's definitely one of the things that can change. I mean, the way we currently work. I guess the thing that now we've talked about data a lot. I guess now it would be the perfect time to ask you that nowadays that in our data there are lots of biases, right? Inbuilt biases, inherent biases. I mean, there have been reports that people, cameras are like more likely to I don't know, claim a black person to be a criminal, something like that. And
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily that person would be criminal, but it's just that the data. I mean, the model has learned from our inherent biases, and the model doesn't know what it is, and it will just learn. It's just like a so my question would be how to mitigate these biases in AI models if the model is learning from the data and we as human beings are like, sort of imperfect. And how do we make more rational AI models? Your thoughts?
Yeah, so I'd start with an example first to help people understand what we exactly try to mean by bias here. For example, Reuters published this report on Amazon hiring portal earlier, long back, but so it had an inherent discriminatory bias against women profiles. So it was talked way longer in the news that the algorithm would discriminate male candidate profiles to be more suitable for certain kinds of jobs than female ranked profiles, right? So that is certain kinds of biases. And the other example that you also gave is about the race, right? So being able to have such fair algorithms to be able to do that. So to prevent bias, there are a couple of methods that we typically employ. Primarily, one of them being uh, started at root. So there are a couple of methods in being able to understand what exactly is the model trying to predict. So one of them is Lime and SHAP. That helps you understand what exactly the model is trying to interpret. So Lime is nothing but local interpretable model agnostic explanations. So it is gifted with highly interpretable linear or tree based models to be able to predict the predictions of being tested for bias. So for instance, like deep convolution neural networks for like that are used for image recognition are really very powerful, but they are not very interpretable, right? So human decision makers can review the decisions from these models. What exactly are they focusing upon? So these libraries help you understand whether the intent of the focus, what you wanted to train upon, is exactly serving the purpose or not. And you can directly eliminate such variables from source. You don't need to always go around that, hey, do I want the most accurate information? Because as data scientists, as data practitioners, we are always under the constant pressure of thinking that, hey, this has to be 99.99% correct, or it has to increase in terms of accuracy. But we would also want to consider the fact that, hey, whether with that accuracy or with those levels, am I introducing some inherent bias that is not impactful for the long run? So try to look for such variables that are directly impacting this particular thing, and they cannot they should be cut at source. That is one of the methods that I would say.
So, as given the best example out there, which was there in the news, one more example which I heard was this face detection algorithm, right? And how there's been trained, and there was a kind of biases which was there, especially for the women in black, right? The accuracy for the model was having almost 98%, 98% for the people of white color, and it was having a very, very low accuracy for the black people, or maybe uh, especially for women in black, right? So now these kinds of algorithm will be when they will be in you can say in ground, right? They can create a lot of problem, and they could, and this is not only because of the only with the data, how the we even humans have been biases towards a lot of things, and that is the major problem. And especially if you look, like especially if you look about now, especially in healthcare, I talk about more because if you look right, if one radiologist is trying to do something, right, you want to predict the tumor is there, there could be 10 different radiologists who will be trying to provide the ground truth for the same kind of data in 10 different ways. There could be. Now, if you think like if I'll give that kind of data to the model, the biases is inherently in the way I'm providing it to the model. So that's a very crucial part. How we'll be able to mitigate those issues. So yeah, that's a bigger problem. And as I think right now, last terminal of stock by Andrew MG was that same thing that we have to be more data centric, not model centric. So the better we can clean up the data, provide the best kind of data to the model, majority of our time, or you can say the majority of our work is going to be covered in that stage. We'll not have to be focused and create a like more and more complex model and getting into that phase. The better people can create the data into a much balanced, or you can say cleaner way, we'll be able to solve the problems in much better way. So yeah, obviously the solution is more towards how we are creating the data and providing into the model part. If we can mitigate these things, yeah, as you rightly mentioned about the explainable AI tools which we have right now, like online, I've not explored them more, but yeah, I've heard of them and they are pretty good. And especially for the medical imaging, you see grad cam and other kind of thing where you can visualize actually why the model is behaving like that. So you get some. It's not only a black box kind of thing. You get some intuitions why, what is the reason behind that particular thing. And another thing is this fair AI part that is also kind of being initiated by Microsoft also, and IBM have their like some APIs where you can understand or divide the data into a fair way. These using these APIs, so before even giving it to the model, you can look at the data and you can see how it will behave. So I think these are the some new tools or very research oriented tools right now. It's not in something which is very common. People are just exploring it at that level. So surely I think there is a lot of work in those spaces which could be helpful for future.
Sorry to interrupt. We have with us our next panelist. She is Dr. Tapti Bandyopadhyay. She has spent more than 25 years of her professional and leadership career as a hands-on AI builder, inventor, researcher, and practitioner. She partnered with senior AI automation SMEs from Gartner and Wipro to establish the first ever AI automation focused practice research and IP organization AISwitch.org. Ma'am had been a DFID scholar at Strathclyde and holds a PhD in AI, as well as she has a university gold medal in engineering. Welcome to the session, ma'am. We are excited to have you with us today.
Thank you, and glad to be here. I was just silently listening to the other panelists, and can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yeah, yeah, you're audible.
Great, great. So I was a bit late to join, but whatever little I have heard of the discussion, I am feeling even better to be able to join it late. Sorry for being late, but at least better late than never. So I think taking the discussion forward as per the theme is concerned, in terms of like probably exactly what my previous speaker was talking about in terms of explainability, this is exactly the area that have been my kind of focus for quite some time now. In fact, since I joined Wipro, so in Wipro, in fact, I set up their home AI automation ecosystem practice. And as a part of that, I was working very closely with the Microsofts and AWSs and Googles of the world, because we were basically building use cases with their APIs, right? So the good part about the Googles and AWSs of the world is that they sit on top of huge volumes of data about you and me, and they also sit on top of fantastic compute power and AI algorithms, right? But unfortunately, they don't have the context, and that is where specific business cases, the problems of the clients, that is something which the service providers and system integrator industries, they always have much more than these pure tech companies, right? So that is where, in fact, the Wipros, Infosys, and TCSs and Accentures of the world come in. And in that capacity, in fact, I set up their partner ecosystem and a lot of evaluation. For example, I remember we were the beta side of Amazon AWS SageMaker and Sumerian in the Google engineering, in the Homes engineering team. Then even for Intel and NVIDIA, we were given their sandboxes at a very early stage to run some of our use cases built on top of the AWS algorithms and the Google Dialogflow kind of stuff at the early days. But explainability actually was a challenge given to us by some of our Wipro, as you all know, is very strong in the BFSI space. So is Accenture and IBM and other folks. And essentially, in BFSI, the adoption of AI is so far the highest, right? Compared to the other, like in manufacturing, the allied sectors are very much on the uptake, like the IoT or Industry 4.0 kind of spaces. But if you see pure play AI algorithms and use cases built up on AI algorithms, like know your customer kind of use cases, or in case of insurance, the claims fraud detection kind of use cases. So those are very mature AI use cases in the BFSI space, in the end user industries across all segments. So in BFSI space, a lot of our clients in Wipro, very large US and European banks and insurance companies were working with us to build these solutions, and they actually gave us the problem of explainability. So a simple example: when you call an insurance claim potentially fraud or incomplete, there is some anomaly in the claim, right? Now, typically, these are all customer facing applications, or even in KYC, if you say that, there are things that are not explained in terms of why are you calling my KYC incomplete, what's the problem with this data that I submitted, and things like that. So these are all customer facing apps, and customers have every right and every reason to question anything that AI generates, right, as a response. When the funny part is, when human customer service agents were doing it, then customers were totally happy, right? I mean, if a human agent goes and tells the customers that, okay, we couldn't read your this particular document submitted, the quality of submission is poor, then the customer was happy and share, they would gladly share maybe another clearer picture of their other card or something. But when the AI agents are doing it, then the customers have all problems of explanations of the world, essentially. And we can't blame the customers, right? Customers are the kings for our clients. They are our customers. So essentially, whatever questions they ask, we have to answer them. So that is when, in fact, we started building the explainability solutions. And we did a simple thing for every text-based kind of a response, like for chat, for typical customer service, like when KYC incomplete kind of messages are going through chat. So we had to integrate the chat output with an explainability layer. So what we did is and explainability in computer vision is still okay, because say, for example, claims fraud detection, you can say that, okay, these are the features which are which are not looking authentic, and this is why we are calling your claim as invalid. But in case of text, it's extremely difficult because you cannot say that on the basis of this social media feedback, we are telling that your KYC document doesn't look authentic, right? So that is where, in fact, what we did is we actually put this algorithm called LRP, layer-wise relevant propagation, in front of the output of LSTM. So we were using LSTM to extract text and fill in the forms. And then filling the forms, of course, can be done by any so-called stupid API from an RPA. But the extraction, the semantic extraction, we were using LSTM, and then we put the output of LSTM go through the LRP layer, and that is where, in fact, we took some 3 patents, US patents on how to use XI on text. And the use cases were right in front of us, and we demonstrated them to the US banking clients and one big corporation, insurance corporation in EU. So they were pretty happy. And some of the US customers, the banking customers like Capital One, for example, they already had explainability built into their systems from 2016. In fact, many of us were very pleasantly surprised to see that Capital One had a XI COE, an explainable AI COE, as part of their AI COE from 2016. So very, very early thinkers, and they were already doing some stuff in the computer vision use cases, but not so much in text spaces. So we learned a lot from some of our clients and built some XI solutions together. So this is one area which is probably going to be huge in this particular decade, in 2020 onwards. And I think all of us AI practitioners, and this is actually in US banking, as far as I know, for all the large banks. In fact, XI has become regulatorily mandatory, right? So anything that you expose to your customers, or anywhere you are using customers' data, you should be able to explain to the customer why are you calling a customer transaction invalid, or why are you using a customer data to recommend certain things to customers. And explainability will be everywhere, in fact, not just in BFSI, but in retail, in manufacturing, in fact, even in Amazon's kind of space, when you are using recommendation engines, there has to be a layer on why you are recommending certain products to certain user groups or customers, and that's coming. And that will become a mandatory regulatory requirement going forward. It already is in some sectors. It will become more pervasive in all other sectors. So I think this discussion is extremely timely, and all of us AI researchers and probably practitioners, we need to build more IPs. Sorry, my German Shepherd is making a ruckus downstairs. Somebody must have come. But yeah, he doesn't require artificial intelligence. We do. So some anomaly he must have detected. So, but the best part is, so long as we cannot tap in their intelligence, we have to rely on our own intelligence and AI. And for that, explainability is going to become a huge requirement going forward. And I'm very happy that we are, taking these discussions in IEEE forums in the right direction. And going forward, it will remain so.
Yeah. Also, I wanted to add to one of two more points I wanted to add. One of them being able to improve diversity. So I was just looking up another article, and it talked about, apart from explainability, it talked about why the biases creep in and who are the folks that uncover such biases. It's not always the end users. It at times, most times, that are the end users, but also the model builders or the algorithm builders or the data collectors or the data scientists. They also are there. So that stat talked about that most such biases are there in during the training phases itself, and they can be directed or cut short uh, if they are notified to the right, they are first noticed. These issues are 40 to 50% of the times first noticed by female or people of color against the folks for which this bias has already crept in. So
True.
when I read that, I was like just wondering about the fact that if we have that more inclusive, more open, more diverse culture in terms of the teams that build this product, it like these things can be cut at source, both in terms of demographics, both in terms of skill sets. It is important to mitigate such unwanted biases, and we are not here to pay anyone lip service that hey, that these folks should be there. It is just in the interest of that particular article that I read, that hey, if these folks are themselves able to able to inspect or detect that hey, this is pretty unfair, because as guys working in this particular domain, or as folks of not non-color, we might be not able to detect this, right? So we would want to have a more inclusive, more diverse workplace where folks of different opinions, races, backgrounds can come in and contribute to such things. And to also add to my second point, which is what Ashish was mentioning around having tools that can mitigate that. So IBM also does has such debiasing tools, and they have an AI fairness project also to
Yes.
right.
AI
So
360. Yeah.
correct. So they have this AI
Yes.
fairness 360 library that has about 10 debiasing approaches. So
And it's open source. Cheers.
exactly. Yeah, totally. So AIF 360, I just wanted to bring that up as a concrete example to the listeners, to the students who would be uh, building their first niche ML model. So I would recommend that you could use that. It can be applied to a host of model ranges, ranging from simplest classifiers to deep neural networks. Some of them are pre-processing algorithms which aim to balance the data itself. Then there would be some of them would be in processing algorithms, and they intend to penalize the unwanted bias during the model building phase. And then there are certain elements in this same library which are around the post processing bits that intend to balance the favorable outcomes after a prediction has been made. So these are two other points that I wanted to add when it comes to debiasing tools for whenever bias has crept into your models.
And
Well,
also, probably to add to that point, in terms of, for example, for builders, SageMaker has got an extension of bias mitigation in ML models called Clarify. I think that's the name of. It's a recently
Yeah.
added library, and I don't think it's completely open source, but for AWS users, it should be easily accessible. But another challenge, in fact, it is again, a very good discussion for builders, like AI 360 being an open source library, but in context of real world applications, it's a very difficult challenge. I'll give you a simple example. Again, going back to the banking area, so we were building something for loan processing, right? So loan eligibility prediction models we were, and it's that again is a very common use case, right? So there, in fact, what was found by some of the Indian clients was that the many women were actually being a kind of given very negative loan creditworthiness ratings, and despite the fact that gender as an attribute, as a parameter, was dropped, it was masked actually, even in the model. So
Yeah.
then we tried to figure out that why is it that even if we are not using gender as a model attribute, even then the model is biased against women. And interestingly, we found out that you are talking about why is so important to get business users feedback on these things. We found out that the quality of collaterals for women loan applicants is very poor, especially in India, given the
Yeah.
fact that even though in Hindu property bills and all that, now legally girls and boys have 50% rights to same rights to the ancestral properties. In practicality, what happens is the girls always forego the rights in favor of their brothers, right? And in that case, what happens, there are very little properties that are registered in the names of women, which
Yeah.
is why when these women go for loan applications, the quality of collaterals is very poor because they don't have any properties in their primary names. And that's one of the reasons why the bias was getting there into the loan application. That is why it is one thing to detect that yes, there is a bias, which is something that thanks to AI 360 or Clarify kind of models, AI itself will probably tell that the number of women being discriminated is much more than men. And but to be able to detect the root cause of a bias in a model, it is extremely important for builders to work extremely closely with the domain experts or process owners who had been running that process in the business side of it for donkey's years, right? Because they actually helped us figure out that this is nothing to do with the rest of the customer attributes. And I mean, no AI engine in the world could figure out that collaterals can be a problem and a
Yeah.
root cause of discrimination from the data source.
Hmm.
Okay.
Nothing?
Actually, this what Tapati ma'am mentioned in the end was my actually source of, I was going to ask, I'm trying to play the devil's advocate here, okay? My question would be, do we really need biases to go away from our systems? I mean, do we really need that thing? I mean, would the world where there would be no biases would be a better world? And that is something really. I mean, I was reading Friedrich Nietzsche's Beyond Good and Evil, and in the first very chapter, he mentioned that all the philosophers are talking about we should pursue truth. I mean, truth is the highest ideal. Nietzsche says, hold on, stop. Why truth? Why not something else? Why not some other virtue or morality? Why not? Why only truth? So my question would be, and it's more of a philosophical question. I mean, so feel free to jump in, and it's very subjective. Why would we really want the biases to go away? I mean, your thoughts, panelists.
I can say on the same line what he was just talking about, like the same thing, right? The inherently, the biases are there in the process, and how we are structured as a society, and maybe as the whole world itself, maybe in the country and all, like how geographically even we are having a lot of biases towards the thing. And to coming to the same point, like forget about AI. If I'll be a banking manager today and I'll be processing the loan and I'll look at the application, I'll first see that the same thing. Like forget about the gender. I'll see move towards the collateral and what are the KPIs which is more prominent to give this that loan, right? Or maybe if it's a business like a woman entrepreneur or something, whether we have a scheme or not, what is the base where we can give that particular collateral, or maybe like look at the collateral and can give the loan. So if we see the whole process here, there's a majority of times the rejection will be there at the ground level. Forget about the AI itself, right? Now if we try to put that into a process where the machine is taking a decision, now we ask so much of questions and we get into this whole part why it is happening, and then AI is being unfair. It's a totally difficult world, because in the end what we are going to do with that machine is also someone will supervise that, and again the person will only take a decision of okay whether whatever the decision has been taken is right or not, and then he will take a decision. The AI what can help is again get back into the explanatory part and tell why he has taken that decision, and on the top of it human can clarify that okay whatever decision has been taken under this circumstances, but we can look at the what exactly the situation is, and then we will go with this decision, yes or no. So it's a very difficult thing. I don't say that complete biases we will, as a society, will not be able to accept that, because
Yeah.
it's a very tricky thing, and you can't be put everything on like just black and white. There are a lot of gray factors are there in between, and it's very difficult. People are not able just now with machines only. They are not able to accept the things. But if you just try to say that okay, we're just creating too many kind of just like only bias-free kind of world, I don't think like, we are even nearly close to that kind of world, and it's not going to be a sustainable model. They will say, okay, let's. We do not need the technology only. Because if you see, there are a lot of technology research, patents has been there, but because we as humans were not ready and we were not accepting that, we have just
Very
flushed them
true.
as we have just put them into a backlog, and a lot of researches has been just gone into the waste just because we are not ready. It's not about the technology. We do not want some good things to get into that way. Better go slowly and then show the world that this is something really good advantage. I get the acceptance and then move instead of just blindly putting everything into a label.
Hmm. Okay, I can add another point here, my 2 cents about uh, when we are saying that why do we need biases in the first place? Because we as humans ourselves are judging all the time, right? We have our own preconceived notions, everything of that type, right? So, what I wanted to understand was primarily around now the algorithm is going to judge us. And the algorithm is going to rank us in Uber or a Zomato delivery or something of that type, right? They are also gonna judge us in turn, and that is the legacy that we are trying to bring to the next generations. So if we pass on that inherent preconceived notions around this particular thing being of a particular type itself, we are typifying it. We are always doing classification problems. I'm not talking about that we are not doing classification, but it is these inadvertent preconceived notions that have been historically ingrained in us. If we can shred a few of those practices that we don't want the future generations to carry forward. Like for example, that hey, women should not work. Like that used to be the day in India, like before pre-independence era, right? Women should not even go to school for that matter. If assume for that matter, if that time someone is saying, I want to build an AI and I don't want to build it in the fact that hey, women should not go to school. That is totally fine with me. That is the legacy that we would have inherited, and we would have always thought that hey, now and we have not reached to a stage of artificial general or artificial super intelligence for that matter. But what I'm trying to say is, if someday, not now, some decades down the line, if algorithms were to rule a lot of decision making that we are trying to make, they should not have so much fair or so much biased understanding or representation of how the world looks, or and that way novelty or thinking around what exactly are their ancestors, that is what us people would have built in, should have gone away. That is what I would like to add.
Well, yeah. So being a woman, I can probably bring a completely contrarian view to, why AI biases must be considered. One is in terms of often it so happens that AI biases actually work as a mirror, and show to us the human society how biases creep into our decision systems, the human decision systems, right? The biggest example is Compass. I am sure you guys have discussed about it, where black people were seen to be discriminated for parole granting. I think it was a court in Texas or Arizona or someplace. They used it, and then there were a huge hue and cry that the repeat crime rates actually were wrongly predicted on the basis of previous judgments by mostly white judges who had an inherent bias of repeat crime prediction for blacks as being more likely, exactly opposed to what the data really said. Right. So the training data set was the judgment of the judges rather than the actual recrime rates of convicts who were out on parole. Yeah, you are saying something?
Yeah, I just want to add on the same thing. What you're saying, it's not only the black thing, the kind of area where they're living in, and that is like if you
Exactly.
are from a particular place, there's a
Pin
high
code
likelihood.
base. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's a very crucial one. Now you can't just a person who's staying somewhere. You're just like kind of putting. So that was
Yeah, so
also considered. Yeah.
economic situation based on the zip code of a person's address. Who will think of address introducing bias as an attribute into the system? But that is
Exactly.
how it is. So essentially, that is a good thing about AI, that depending on if we are conscious to bring out our own internal biases, if we ourselves say that okay, it's okay for us to live with biases in society, then nothing, no changes will ever happen, right? Then Trumps will always Trump. But when we say that, okay, biases are not a good thing, no matter what kind of bias, like, being a woman, if only the woman man biases go, I cannot say that, okay, I'm fine with racial bias, I'm fine with color bias, I'm just not fine with gender bias. That is not how, societies ever progress, right? So any kind of biases, if AI acts as a mirror to us as a society, and tells us that, this is where I have detected bias and you can do something about it, I think that's a very, very positive thing, and that is the first step. And the second step would be where, if AI can actually, now suppose you're talking about so many generative algorithms, right? GAN, big GAN, BiGAN, and so on and so forth. With all these generative algorithms, think of a situation where, like the collateral example that I was telling you about, the typical question, in fact, we had some discussions with another data science team of a very, very, very huge global investment bank. So they were saying that, so what if the quality of collaterals are actually bad for women, and that actually results into women's loan repayment ability? So then it's fine to have a bias, because the bias is reflecting the economic reality of the system, not just social reality. So, of course, the bank needs to take that into account, right, to remain profitable. So, but suppose if you can think of an AI model that can generate an alternative loan application processing logic itself, for, like, I'm saying that, the policy engine of reinforcement learning itself is designed by AI and not humans, right? So in that case, you can train the GAN layers to generate alternative loan application processing logic, which will probably treat women applicants with a completely different set of attributes, which will reflect their, payment potential or payback potential, as which will basically invent a different lens to look at loan applications, not the traditional lenses and the traditional attributes. So all our existing biases in our human decision systems, uh, two ways AI can help us, overcome those. One is by acting as a mirror to detect that, yes, there is bias between different groups and showcase it to us. The second is we can actually use AI itself to generate certain kind of new lenses to look at classification problems, which we ourselves, thanks to our own intrinsic implicit biases, we are not able to generate on our own.
Um, I mean, I do. So before we go ahead, I think it's very imperative. It's absolutely imperative for me to mention that to all the folks out there. When we talk about biases and AI, AI models, we are not talking about prejudices, okay? Biases in human beings are called presuppositions and prejudices, right? I mean, if back in like 100 years ago, if I would see a woman getting educated, I would have lost my mind, okay? I guess anyone would have lost my mind. But that's because of some sort of presuppositions, prejudices. But when we talk about biases in AI, we are not talking about them per se. I mean, in some sense, yeah, they do reflect the presuppositions that they have gained through the data. And from where do they get the data? They get the data from us. But I need to mention one thing before we move ahead to the next one, and that's one of the big, really good questions. You mentioned that, why the AI, even though you masked the gender part in the loan thing, and they were still not giving, enough loan to women, according to my understanding, why did they do that? So they found out instead of gender, they focused on one particular thing, and it turned out to be that particular case. And I think that usually happens. So I would like to give two examples. So when you mentioned that about the crime rates among the blacks, turns out it's not about the race. It turns out about the neighborhood, as Ashish said. It's about,
Yeah.
I mean, if you were to grow up in a, if you do not, if you had mother, no father, I mean, in Black community, it has been noticed that single parenthood is like has skyrocketed since since the invention of birth control pills. So, so men don't have, well, the young boys don't have role models to look for. So they will look for other people of their age, and there's no one to guide them. They will delve into activities that they will regret later, and a lot of some of them will end up in jail. Right. So it's not about race; it's about culture. And one of the things that, nowadays we have a lot of women movement, women empowerment. I do agree with that. But when I learned that, hey man, I did some research and I found out it was not about as if women did not know how to stand up for themselves about 800 years ago. No, they knew how to do that. But since the invention of birth control pill, women could say no. I mean, earlier when back in the days when, I mean, women had to rely on a husband, on a man, and if she's like, if she's like pregnant with a baby, she can't do anything further. I mean, it literally halts you. Now, since the invention of birth control pill, women empowerment has skyrocketed. So it was not about gender per se. It was about the invention of one particular thing that could, empower women. So these collaterals, if and now it leads to my next question about one, ma'am, Tapati, Ashish, and Siddharth, all of you mentioned about one thing about decision making. And now this is my next question. It sounded like all of you were talking about decision intelligence. AI can help us to make decision intelligence, but maybe they are not the best tools to make decisions for us. So this is my next question. How far along do you think would there be humans in the loop? I mean, there will be obviously certain types of jobs that will get replaced, certain types of jobs that will get redundant, and certain types of, a lot of jobs, I believe, I'm an optimist, that will get that will require expertise in decision intelligence. Like, so my question is that, what type of skills would be required by the upcoming, enthusiasts, all the people who are watching this panel discussion? What sort of skills would they be, requiring to at least get a job which won't be made redundant by upcoming AI and stuff like that? Your thoughts?
So that's the best part. I love this topic, and this is being little how we started working writing a book, and I've been writing a lot about this. The kind of fear which we have, like from the industry 4.0, and how the robots and AI will take over all jobs, and we have seen that, right? From all the movies to like everything, that the whole automation part is coming up. I think whole human especially has this fear. And recently, with a lot of talks, and because I'm in the healthcare sector and we do work with radiologists and all, they do have a fear that AI will be able to replace the doctors, radiologists, which you can understand is the most crucial and most technical thing, right? Because they are more the highly skilled people, and the fear is at all the levels. If you talk about a layman person who's working, maybe admin role, or maybe a driver out there, or maybe a worker out working, to the person who is highly skilled out there, the fear is kind of constant, maybe a different level, but the fear is there that how the AI will play part in maybe their domain and their kind of workplace it's there. Okay, and I do have a kind of mix of feelings. So first thing is, what are the work and skills sets which we can see, and we're already seeing it, right? Because I don't know whether we should say that thanks to COVID and this whole last year, you would have seen that there are a lot of work jobs, and we have never thought that okay, we will be able to work, like especially the work we are doing, IT, the tech startups, like the way the teachers has worked, the way the workforce, the healthcare workers has been working, all the people, like maybe the administration part, the legal processing have happening online. So there are a lot of things we have never thought will have happened. One instance, like when this kind of pandemic has changed the whole space. So there could be another one or two instances can happen in future which can change the whole, and the whole, you can say the whole technology, AI, and the digital transformation can happen again. The jobs which I'll say, which is surely gonna you can say automate, is the mundane kind of work. You see, like there is some repetitive work. There is a less you have the brain use. You can say the creativity part, or where the more of a decision making is not very it's like too much, right? Those kinds of jobs are we are already seeing they are in the way of getting automated, right? Those are the first way of jobs which will surely go. Another part which the jobs which I think the skills which people should look at is more of a like logical thinking, creativity part, and where you can solve the problems. And like you should look not only looking at the just like solving or doing the work, maybe solving the problems and using all the skills out there, maybe using any technology tools out there. Right? If you see like the content creation part has become a totally new kind of in the digital marketing space, and where there is no you can say there is no kind of rule. Anyone can become, you can say, a celebrity now, right? With the help of social media. So these are the totally different skill, or you can say different job profiles which we are seeing recently has emerged, which we have never thought, right? If I just give an example like drone pilots and drone uh, the engineers out there, right? These are the very highly skilled and the jobs, especially in UAE and all those regions. People don't even know that these kinds of things are accessing. So where you are working on some of the cutting edge technologies, maybe the work skills which require more of as a human decision making in nature, instead of just following a process out there which somebody has done. Like if you see the whole manufacturing plant, like Alibaba and Amazon warehouses, there is not even a single one or two person out there. Everything is being like managed by robots out there. So these are the spaces where you see where you have a kind of very repetitive process will surely go on automate. But the thing is, if you have a domain knowledge, you can work with this AI. Now, if you look at the drivers, there's one video I was watching where the she was working as a driver for more than like maybe the half of her life she has worked, and now recently when this especially in outside India, they have been planned this very heavy vehicles out there which follow very straight path. There is not much they have to do. They have to maybe go from one place to another and just unload that vehicle. So there they have implemented almost an AI self-driving car of systems where just a human driver is there just to provide a feedback. Now even for training those self-driving cars, you require the drivers out there to at least test and do that. So you can become an SME of that, and maybe you can work with AI to understand how to tell that because sometimes AI taken a wrong decision, or sometimes as a human we would have taken a wrong decision, and that could happen. But obviously, the percentage of those people would be very less. Like SMEs, they can become an SME of that particular field, and then can understand how AI and technology they can become a part of a technology and can create their profile. But the 90% chunk of people will have to migrate to some new work, as we have seen, because there is no other way. Because you have to upskill yourself into some new things to fill that gap. And in US, I think we have already seen there's a kind of lot of areas where future people who do not have that kind of job profile, not they are kind of you can say jobless, which was not a kind of scenario before. And I think the history have shown this. Like whenever there is a kind of industrial revolution has happened, there is a lot of people who have like they have whole reach has happened when especially the steam engine came, when the industrialization happened. There was always that kind of thing, and but in the end, you have to move on with that. So that will be the time period. There could be we'll see like robots and all. People had rage before also, but slowly the acceptance will come as there is no alternate. You have to move along with that.
So before the next speakers just ask, jump in, I just want to add one more question along with this, and that would sort of help. So all I'm saying is that who are the best candidates to enter this field of AI? I mean, what are the prerequisites, stuff like that. So maybe if you could shed some light on that as well, it would be like hugely beneficial for everyone, including me as well.
Okay, sure. I can go next. I was adding to Ashish's point that whenever industrial revolutions come in and go, there are some jobs that get uprooted and there are new ones that get created. Right. I'd like to cite one example when banks underwent this change of digitalization, automation, and all of that. Right. So they never felt of the way that hey, we are gonna replace humans. It always was that we are gonna augment what we have. No organizations, organizations with good leadership are trying to have employ AI in a way that they want to keep doing more, be more productive, be more efficient in a way that that humans are not required to do the mundane, monotonous, repetitive chores that they used to do, but rather make more decisions, be more on the decision, logical reasoning, creative front, with which they can handle businesses, customers, things of more logical, rational thinking in that pragmatic sense of the way. So even Jobs to be is a great book that I'm guessing a lot of you might have read or heard about. They also spoke about this very example around when checks started getting automated, all these digital recognition, check fraud recognition, all of that started happening when they started having ATMs for dispensing cash. They never told their bank employees that, hey, we're going to lay over hundred thousands of employees, that you are not needed anymore. They always felt the need that some other thing would come in and take place, and that would help you serve your customers, serve your businesses, serve your partners in a little better way. And another example that I wanted to add is, for example, which is around the creative, innovative space. Despite we getting a variety of industrial grade clothes, apparels, garments already printed out there, there are still folks, designers as an industry still exists, right? People would want to go for, hey, I'm wearing a Manish Malhotra this, or I'm wearing a Sabyasachi this or that, for example, right? So like this innovative, creative sense that appeals to a broader audience, if you can make a brand out of it, if you can create value to the users, to the experience that you're enabling the users with, that is something that is not going to go away. That is what I feel. And to add to the second question that you were also mentioning, Avin, there's a recent article from AICD that is right from India only, that engineering would not require physics and maths as a very basic necessity to enter into engineering, right? So I, I I knew folks from 2013, 14, 7, 8 years ago, who had done history majors, who were into arts, who were into political science. They progressing tremendously, doing exceptionally well into AI and machine learning. Right, couple of clients in the US, couple of clients in Israel, Palestine, all of them. They did not have a science background per se. I'm not saying that it is not necessary. They learned eventually that. So if you wanted to understand stochastic gradient descent, there would be a certain amount of calculus required to be able to understand the same. But we as a society are progressing in a way that there are no barriers to entry in what you want to learn and what knowledge can come in. We can always learn, unlearn things that we don't want, and be able to help progress any industry for that matter, be it AI or be it anyone else also for that matter. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on this.
In terms of hiring, for example, again, from my Gartner days and then Wipro days, typically, I mean, the challenge that I have seen, especially when we are hiring for AI data science related practices, is that most of the time people relate their ability to code in Python as they know AI, which is I used to get like infuriated, by somebody claiming that, oh, I code in Python, I developed these modules. Like, who needs to code in Python? There are millions of libraries. There is Keras, there is PyTorch. For God's sake, you don't have to code anything. I don't think nothing much is left until unless you are actually coming up with a completely new kind of algorithm or a technique itself, like the deep minds of the world are coming up with almost on a daily basis. If you don't do that, you don't need to code anything. Everything else is already available in the libraries, one library or the other. You should just know how to search the libraries. So that is where, in fact, is the first thing that there is an overemphasis of being able to code in Python, and Python is probably the easiest to code language. I have been coding for 25 years. I started with C. So you can imagine, I started with embedded SQL and C, and from that, Python seems like I'm reading a Jeffrey Archer novel, yeah, honestly. So there is nothing to code, in fact, in Python in the first place. And then taking credit for it is even stupider. So that's the first thing I used to tell, that please don't come to me and say that just because you can code in Python, I will hire you. That's the first point. And second point is, I think the practical emphasis what I have seen when delivering to clients, knowledge of one particular domain is at least terribly important. So if you are developing some kind of use case for an insurance company, you should definitely know how actuaries work, how they think, how they decide, what are the commonsensical, or formally speaking, the heuristic functions that they use in their own decision making domains, and try to map that into the models rather than just writing a code and expecting some accuracy by fluke, which is what typically the so-called data science trained engineers they try to do. Being an engineer myself, I love to be an engineer. I still consider myself very lucky to have done engineering, because to me engineering is not just um, the building systems. Engineering is a way of thinking, right? So if you are given a problem, you solve it in using certain techniques in a scientific manner. That is what engineering is. It's applied science. And that is where, in fact, not just science but anything applied. My daughters, for example, my elder one is 18 now. She is going to probably University of California, San Diego, for just because they offer a very unique combination of, she wants to do computational linguistics. Now, computational linguistics as a course is not available at undergrad level anywhere. But UCSD has come up with a very interesting option for her. That is, you can do BS in cognitive sciences. That's a unique course that they have come up with, and you can do a BA in linguistics. So she wants to do a dual major, one in linguistics because that's her, she is very strong in language and that's what she likes to do. And she also likes computer science, which is something that she cannot pursue in, unfortunately, in our country so far. And that is where, in fact, she will do a double major, and she is very happy and excited. So that's the way forward. Probably each one of us who have been very happy to be engineers, so wearing just one hat, should develop maybe 2 or 3 horns on our heads, and so that it can hold multiple hats. And probably one of them should be language, one of them should be art, and one of them should be engineering, rather than just the engineering hat.
I think just to add, I think one more thing on the skill part, because I've been working in tech startups, especially with graduate learning, and there is a massive push, you can say, and the people I'm getting from MBA, CA, BCom, mechanical, civil, and you just name it. Any other people are wanting to get into data science. I'm saying there's nothing wrong with that, but the kind of conception they have regarding the like maybe from C, like C++, Java, people have spend a lot of time and they don't want to get into the competitive programming part, and they just fed up with that. And they, when they find Python, obviously the 2 week we see the learning curve of the Python, it's really cool, and they find out it's very easy to do in your data science. You just do
Exactly.
pandas, SQL, and Keras, you do, and you can build them all. And that's something where the trap where people get into when you do all the skills and you think like, okay, I can do this. But the whole problem happens when the real machine learning projects happen. It's a totally another world, and that world they have never seen it before. And even the kaggle and all is I'll see the majority 50-60% part is done because you're getting a very clean, very at least a structured data itself. In the real machine learning project itself, when you get into corporate or something, it's a totally different world. You don't know even where the data is going to come from. So the challenges which is there in real time and what is being in the, you can say, the layer above is a very hard part. And industry also as a job way, as I have seen that, because when I've started, I've also followed a very similar path. Like there was a no kind of way. Everybody has learned from 10 different places and all, right? And job profile are also not very clear. So what they just focus is more toward like either you can code in Python, you know SQL, or you have worked some machine learning problem. And so there also I need there's some standardization or some things has to be done, because it's just going like the way, like you have a requirement, you have to fill it, and it's very difficult. So we need to come up with some at least some processes, and people should not. I think people just go into data science because they don't want it to get into competitive programming and data structure. I'll say that when you come into the real world, you really have to get into. I'm actually learning all the concepts back because you can't
Yeah.
skip that code, and that's something which people feel that when you commit, you don't have to work go into that until you are in AI research or something. You're working on some creating some another kind of statistical model itself. That could be a totally different world. But I think hardly 1 or 2% job is there where you're just doing a building an algorithm or doing that statistical modeling kind of thing. 90% use case is actually you build their application, give it to the client where they can realize it and all. There's a whole layer of that where there's a whole skill mismatch and what they are expecting by coming up, and when they actually get into the thing, it's a kind of a lot of I think say, yeah.
I think it's, what Einstein mentioned about theory of relativity, that actually AI is becoming like that as a field, right? Einstein mentioned that anybody with German grammar school 8th standard math knowledge should be able to understand, theory of relativity. And I think that is precisely what the situation is. The first question for any AI practitioner I used to ask is, explain to me the difference between correlation and regression. Just that. And I am sorry to tell you that 90% of them actually couldn't explain it properly. So they haven't done their basic maths and stats and, leave alone computer science. In fact, I got my girls to study microprocessor architecture, the book that all of us probably have read, the Bray book. Yeah. So it's like Gray's Anatomy for medical sciences. The computer science students have the Bray. So, and the basic understanding of microprocessors, if you are running something on Spark, if you're running something on Hadoop, and you don't even know that what is the difference between a GPU and a CPU and why GPUs actually work better for certain types of problems, how will you ever leverage any kind of big data infrastructure, right? It's like you just know how to drive a car, but you don't know how IC engines work. At least you should know how it works, right? So that if the engine seizes, you know what to do. So that much knowledge needs to be there. It doesn't mean that you have to actually be able to create an IC engine of your own, but at least you should know that, okay, there are cylinders and there are pistons, and this is how the energy gets generated. Right? So that's something that I think fundamentally is required to enter this space. But at the same time, I feel that the space is open for all, so long as your basics, the 8th grade grammar school, is on.
Yeah, I do agree with that because you basically all of you mentioned about something called domain knowledge. So if someone, so I'll be honest with you that in my very limited experience, when people do come and ask me, hey man, I want to get in data science, I ask them, hey man, what is your niche? You could be an excellent data scientist in tech, but a terrible data scientist in healthcare. The domain knowledge is important. If I know all about, let's say, tech and stuff like that, I have zero knowledge in retail, how it works, my data science skills I will not be able to leverage it then, because in the end I have to help the executives to make decisions, and that's where your decision intelligence comes in, right? So I always ask them, what is your niche? I've seen help people from biotech coming to data science, civil engineering coming from data science. So I don't think a civil engineer would be, at least to me, he won't be the first person on top of my list to select him to be a data scientist in, let's say, in healthcare, because because of obvious domain knowledge expertise. So yeah, I do agree with that thing. Now I guess we are almost about up. So with one final question, and I think it is built on the discussions that we have been having so far. So we all agreed, at least this was mentioned by Ashish and weighted by Siddharth and Tapti as well, that maybe our society is not leveling up with AI. Our AI could become unbiased, but maybe our society has not reached there yet. So my question is particularly to India, then how would the Indian market change due to a rise in AI ventured startups? And what does it mean for businesses, big, small, medium size, right now? And how would the disruption be seen by A, by we citizens, B, by the government of India? And in what way should the government react to support your folks?
Okay, let me start. Uh, I feel India as the youngest the people we have, as the youngest country out there, people are very aggressively getting into this technology, at least learning and understanding it, like how what is AI and data science field. And as being we are the best software engineers providing nation out there, so we have a kind of cut, you can say upper edge in this part, and a lot of people are getting into the at least understanding the AI part, and we are seeing this a lot of uh, people out there who are upskilling on this technology. So that is the one good part. Now coming up to the whole India level, like talking about businesses and whole infrastructure itself and the government, I think we are still a lot behind as coming to the developed nations, or maybe like China, US, or even UAE. If you talk about, we're still at very I would say starting stage only. Government do not have, even I've been into Niti Aayog and all those webinars and all, but they still kind of they know that there is something they should be focused about, they should be working about. I don't see they have been doing a lot of collaborations with a lot of companies out there, Intel and other companies out there, but still they do not have very clear picture or clear pathway to at least how the India would be 2025, 2030. They do not have any very clear picture how they'll be able to cope up with the technologies, and like even the cyber security and all those things are, we know that India, we do not have that kind of infrastructure. If some kind of bigger hack happened today, how we'll be able to do that, especially with the AI kind of technologies. If such kind of technology will come, and maybe if there would be some products out there will be using some technology, how even you will like we check that, like if Paytm or some bigger, those who have the biggest data sources out there of the countries, if they are using something, how even you can backtrace those things and even put that, like even check that quality control and all those things. I'm pretty much not sure how they would be able to do that. How US and China, they have a good control over all these things, and they have a better understanding how the startups and things are working on. So, and because a lot of startups are coming up, they are being funded from a lot of investors outside. So the data where exactly is going to be with the, if it's an Indian customers out there, do you have the visibility that your the data of exposure of data is not to the outside world or those kinds of things? I don't think there is any clear thing, and that's something which should be focused on. And but as in AI, the whole the people understanding part and upskilling themselves on the technology front, so they can contribute and they can become the next IT which boom was happen, like that could happen in India, where India will be taking the most of the projects out there, and they will be contributing a lot to this whole AI community. That I feel is surely we are on the right track.
Okay, I can also go next. Primarily around being able to have an infra or infra for AI in India. I'm saying that Digital Bharat, Digital India initiatives are taking up place, but where we are lagging in is an AI first approach. Like Google had that mobile first theme back since 2015-16. They went on to developing like an AI first approach in 2018-19 and all of that. So building a nation in the sense that they have numerous things in to empower or build the nation upon, but trying to build a technology first nation, and that too with AI at the forefront, is something that the policymakers, if given the right education, they could spend some time on that and try cultivating that culture around being able to promote such spaces. Moments like, for example, I'd say Palantir, right, the biggest company who helps US government in the entire data science, data analytics, big data projects on AI as well, right? So being able to promote a Palantir of an Indian origin, right? Everywhere we see an Indian inside in the biggest of the companies, right? uh, Majority of the folks at Google, Facebooks, Microsofts are Indian origin based. So we have the talent, we have the right talent. We just need the ability to sustain them, to give them a platform, a channel by which they can scale or leverage technologies and tools and build a better India, be it AI or be it any other technology for that matter. So being able to build something that impacts the country as a whole, like for example, like a KYC example was talked more often than not, that if even our banks, Indian banks, why aren't they doing it, right? For example, like they can also do a digital KYC, right? They are doing it, like for example, but they're not doing it at a very fast pace. They know the solutions to it, but there has to be such certain enforcement that, hey, we want, because we are operating at a very big scale economy. We have about 1.2 billion like in demographics, right? So we need to also consider this fact about uh, being able to address the problem at scale, being able to have those platforms and tools by which we can like bolster the initiatives that the startups or even the established giants of Indian origin are trying to make. That would go a long way in fostering the development of AI in our country. And that initiative has to come in from the policymakers as well. And yeah, that's what I would want to add.
Well, so here again, I have a very contrarian view, and something that probably many of us may not like to hear, but this is again, you know, based on data. So, two things I would say. I mean, I actually am very scared that we are probably going to become the next AI sweatshop of the world. And while the deep minds and all these bleeding edge algorithms will be generated in the Irelands and Israels and of course California, we will end up just being the back office R&D of most of these, very successful unicorns. And the only way we can actually probably prevent that from happening, because we had been running IT service sweatshop for God knows donkey's years, right? I mean, for 30 odd years now, and I think that legacy has been both good and bad for us, because we have this mentality that somebody will give us a problem and then we will solve it. The ability to question, right, and the ability to discover the problems without anybody giving us a requirement specification is something that we still lack as a nation. The ability to think out of the box, the ability to actually discover a problem on our own is something that we need to practice probably from the school level onwards. It's the way our education system works. Probably that is where should be the first place to start, rather than spoon feeding them on techniques to solve problems. We should first give them techniques to identify and discover problems. That is first thing. I think instead of coming up with great AI policies and data policies for the entire citizenry of India, I think we should look at the education system to make it more relevant for the new age skills. And secondly, I feel the importance of research, the importance of IP generation, the importance of patents, for example, is extremely undermined in India. If you look at the AI research index reports, China has superseded US in number of patents per year on AI since last 3 years. So if they are doing everything right the first time, what stops us? Why can't we actually promote probably the AI startups that are actually focusing on more patents, rather than just creating more and more manpower, eventually getting into that sweatshop, the cost benefit. We are probably going to end up creating AI monkeys, right? We will pay them peanuts and they will keep coding some stupid thing in Python forever. And then a next generation of monkeys will come who will maintain those stupidly written Python codes again forever, right? So that is actually my very honest scare that I have. And I think even for students, for all the IEEE participants in the chapters in India, especially the ones that are working on AIML, look at the algorithms rather than looking for data sets to use these algorithms on. Try to create new algorithms, take patents for it, increase the number of patents of a nation which is having 1.2 billion brains, and 70% of them less than 25 years of age. What are we doing with that demography, right? So I think China is old, right? China is, if China gets highest number of patents in AI in the world, it's a shame for us as a nation, right? And that's honestly my very clear view on this.
Yeah, Tapati, I mean, you mentioned when you started the answer, you said you were afraid to sound contrarian, but for some reason, I agree with everything you said because, I mean, you know, maybe not in that tone, but yeah, politely, I would say that, you know, it's my opinion only that it comes down. You mentioned that, yeah, you can create all the policy you want and still see India lagging behind. And to me,
Exactly.
yes, that's true. And to me, it's like the solution comes down to culture because I am very close with the Israeli culture. I mean, Judeo-Christian culture and
Yes.
Islamic culture. Those folks are crazy. Those crazy. I'm surrounded by nations that don't want you to exist. They can't they can't be complacent in their attitude towards research and intelligence gathering. So they have to go out and invent new stuff, you know, so that they don't get annihilated by the enemies. And that sort of you know, risk taking culture, you know, is really really important. And unfortunately, I think that is lagging in Indian culture. I'm not talking about north, south, east, west Indians, because even in India we have a lot of divisions, but I'm talking about in general, I'm saying. And that sort of
Yeah.
risk taking culture is extremely important. And people would say, hey, you're in research, what sort of risk is there? Really, investing 15-20 years inside into one particular thing, don't you think that's a risk? To me, that's at least a risk. I mean, so yeah,
Life is at risk. Yeah.
exactly. I mean,
I
you're
have one
investing.
more thing on that. Right? The major problem is that the controlling. If you talk about the same the project, right, that happens itself in the company itself. There is a certain division which is in US, UK, and they would be competing the same for the same kind of project. And now, what happens? Who gets the priority? Now, who is going to take the decision maker? So maybe the project manager, the whole controlling person is in that particular area, right? So the major problem is that all the businesses out there, even the Indian startups, with all the seed funding, the controlling power and decision making is again going towards either the US, China, or that. So if we can have a more entrepreneurship like a kind of community, a very strong community where the people can hold each other and can support in a way, and we get a good funding in house only, right? Again, what is happening again, the mergers, like with the Reliance, and what they are again doing is they're just piling up their bucket, not focusing on
Yeah.
about what that particular startup is actually doing and how we can take that startup to that another level. They are just looking more towards the finances part, not exactly towards like boosting up to be a research oriented field where they can need to, or maybe at least compete with the biggest organizations out there. Even if you talk about self-driving car, there could be 20 startups out there who are working on self-driving car, but they are just to support the self-driving car, which is not going to work. In the end, who is going to bring the self-driving car to the India? They is going to control the
Exactly.
whole transportation system. Like talk about Ola is, I think, one of the biggest example is at least competing with that, and the same with the like the Flipkart India market. But that again has gone right now. Who is the owning that whole e-commerce space? If you talk about like community space outside, it's a very difficult thing because the controlling power is again at the very higher edges, and
I do. Yeah, yeah, go on, sir.
that's it.
Fine. So I guess we are at the end. So I guess we can sort of open the flow for Q&A. I'm not sure how will we get the questions. So the team, if you can fire up the questions, if you should have received any, I guess all of us would love to answer them. At least, you know, given our wow, right away. So so I guess I mean this. By the way, I'm taking off my moderator hat now. Anyone can chip in and sort of answer this thing.
So this is the same discussion with Elon Musk and Jack Ma. So both have their own. I think both are right at their day. What Elon Musk and I think he do that like kind of work he's doing, and he has shown that like that is crazy, and the way he sees AI and how it is progressing is actually putting chips in the minds of humans. So the cyborg things and all, right, which we have seen. So that guy is actually doing it, and the other guy he talks about like you know, he is on the optimist side. So this is a scary word could be there, but I think we humans have good control on putting it or legalizing some things. So maybe we will not be able to overtake the humanity at least. But yeah, we'll be seeing a kind of mix of where if we see like the robots will be just moving around here and there, how the Alexa and the Siri has become. We'll be seeing more these kind of creatures out there in our society. That I feel not taking over as
Um,
a human.
I think, just to reiterate, panelists, keep your answer short and crisp. So, with that being said, I will, go on. Would like to answer the previous question. Would be like, sort of keep. I think that question was extended from the book Life 3.0 by, I guess it was by Ray Kurzweil. I
Yeah.
guess. I don't think so. Personally, I don't think that. So, what Ray talked about in that book was more about artificial general intelligence. I don't think that we are anywhere close to that. The closest that we have come to artificial general intelligence is something called GPT-3, and it is nothing but a language model. And the best thing that, I mean, if you type in something and it will appear to you as if it knows everything, but no, it's not. We can expect a lot of verticals to rise up, a lot of new series, Alexas, self-driving cars, but I don't think that a self-driving AI would be able to make coffee for me. So I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, I don't think that we are anywhere close to artificial general intelligence. I would be really surprised if we reach singularity. Singularity is the point where AI will take over humanity. So I would be really surprised if in my lifetime if that happens. And that's my honest opinion. So I guess we have one more question. What's the role of AI in media and content creation? Folks, you're up.
Yeah, so I will probably take that, and I will take the example of GPT-3 in this particular context. So, Washington Post, in fact, published flaunted an article, I think somewhere in December last year, and claimed that they used GPT-3 to generate that article. And there was a huge uproar about it in the AI community, some of the AI communities that I'm part of. And in fact, it was later found after investigation that whatever bullshit that GPT-3 generated on that article, it was curated by 8 human journalists. So the very claim that the entire content was generated by GPT-3 is, I mean, falsified to be politically correct, right? So many of the AI practitioners actually were up in arms against such kind of completely frivolous claims, and these work against AI adoption rather than favoring it is what we all felt. And yes, in media and content creation, a lot of creative AI. For example, Google created something called Imagination Augmented Algorithms (I2A) way back in 2018. They started it, which if effectively could actually extrapolate the third dimension if you give it two-dimensional images of a scene, which if you think of convolutional neural networks is a great feat, because simulating multiple dimensions is one thing, but identifying one of them to be the most probable third dimension in only from 52 dimensional pictures of a particular scene, it's a huge technical feat to accomplish, right? So from that side, in fact, in media and content creation, visual content creation, AI has gone a long way. But again, so far as text is concerned, so far as language is concerned, GPT-3 or even Google has come up after BERT, they have come up with something called Smith, which is a far lesser loaded, like GPT-3 has 175 billion parameters. Smith has much lesser than that, I think 1/10 of it. And it requires much lesser CPU or compute power henceforth. But even any of those algorithms, I think we are a long, long way to go so far as using natural language generation to the extent of it can actually create new stories or new narratives. It can generate reports, yes, given the data, given some kind of data visualization layer. It can generate reports which might have some meanings. But to build a narrative, to build connected narratives with context, long, long way to go. I think in 50 years we'll not reach there, not in our lifetime.
Yeah, like just to add in a short, the media and content creation we see like social media and all. There's a lot of tools. So it is what it is doing. We are only generating content. It is just acting like you're just a Snapchat filter, or it could be like all these different kind of things where you just it can detect a lot of. So intelligence part is there, but as the only AI will create the media content, and we have seen that GPT-3 one movie has been released, and this API is there where you can generate script and out there. It's totally junk. To do anything what you want, just for fun and play, not for some serious work. The work is might be going on, but right now, yeah, not in near future. There would be something very extraordinary will come in this space.
Yeah, it's primarily around perception, but nothing around creation of its own, I'd say. So yeah, we have GANs that can create like invoices, semi-structured business documents on its own, but after having fed numerous tons and tons of examples. But again, they are not the examples that a human would create, like how I or you would create an invoice or a document of that type. There are deep fakes who can generate research papers of that type, but then again, primarily heavy bias around the embeddings or the words, the corpus that you go in, and that is nothing significant as of sorts. It can fool you at if you look at the layout, if you look at the drafts of it, if you look at from a bird's eye view. But if you take a closer, deeper look, it would not be something very similar to what a human would have done. Yeah, that's it. Nice. In the future, with the pace and in-depth development of AI algorithms, will be some difficult or unthought of fields that will employ AI. Okay, that's addressed to me. What could be some of the difficult or unthought of fields that will employ AI? I'd say again that adds to my previous question, which is creation and imagination. That is something which currently the state of AI is more like a symbiotic relationship between man and machine, where machine is helping us do certain mundane, monotonous chores in a better fashion, and still the decision taking, control, logic, freedom, that is again still on us. The unheard field that I would say I'd be pretty amused or if I'd see me getting a designer shirt or a designer a new pen invented with a very flexible user experience focused style that would be preferential to my needs and something that I would pay for. So anything related to design, anything innovative in that space, if AI can come up with, I'd say it would be phenomenal. And then another thing that could be great is uh, lawmaking or regulatory things. I'm not giving them that control, but I'd be amused if that field also someday gets taken aback by AI algorithms. Anyone else? If someone else wants to address that, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I can add like most of the healthcare field. I think that's the only field where we as in humans we have progressed in a lot of other fields, but there's something where we need a lot of advancements. And if you look at how very like the Cambridge and all those are doing some work, like maybe coming up with this bionic arms and all, right? But there are a lot of field where we if we can get into that kind of development with people who lost their maybe any power and anything in their body, right? And we can artificially give them the actual limb or such kind of power which they have lost. That would be, I think, the biggest gift of AI or the robotics technology, at least the technological gift that could human ever have. Instead of just having solutions out there, that could be something. And I've seen that that is coming up where people. It's not only just a materialistic part; it actually works like your real hand, leg, and maybe eyes, ears, right? That could be the biggest gift to the humanity. I feel that AI can give. If we can
Yeah.
reach to that state where everybody would be having an
I mean,
equal
I
I'd
guess
add to that example a thought translation device, for example, that is coming that could come in and help us reduce all the user interfaces that we have. We are super fascinated by Gboards of the world. Some example that you guys were quoting around federated learning, but yeah, if what I'm thinking, if I'm wearing a wearable cap or even having an implanted bionic chip, I could type that or record my thoughts in a much more cohesive way. I do not need to carry a device all the time. So much more development of technology. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not sure that would I be super thrilled to have a thought translation thing. I don't want the world to know my thoughts. But I guess we can end, end in a positive note that this is an emerging field, folks. Or if you're interested, there's nothing in the world that can stop you apart from you. So yeah, come in, and this is the most exciting time to be alive. So with that being said, that's it from me. Thank you for having me, and thanks, panelists.
Thanks, everyone.
Pleasure. Thank you,
Thank
everyone. Thank you.
you.
You've been such a good sport and been a phenomenal moderator as well.
Well, we-
Sorry. So now that was a really compelling session, and I strongly believe that our participants are just as ecstatic as we are and really loved the session. On this high note, I would like to conclude this session by thanking our esteemed guest for being a part of this event, Epsilon 2021. We really appreciate that you shared your insights with everyone and introduced us to this world of limitless possibilities. So, sir, you gave an interesting view with these unique examples and very precisely covered all the points. And the major takeaway I would like to highlight would be the privacy in ML, the various method by which we can protect our valuable data. Taki ma'am, your interesting views and the excellent explanations were a cherry on top for our session. And Ashish sir, you had a brilliant manner touch, brilliantly manner touch the crux of the topics. And Mr. Even covered every aspect in the field of ever intriguing AI and ML brilliantly. Thank you, everyone, once again. We were really glad to have you guys on our panel. We are really thankful for every discussion. If you'd like to
Thank
say any
you.
words, please.
Thanks.
Thank you for having me. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
Thank you to the IEEE chapter that helps in organizing such sessions and helps industry academia connect. Example that we all were talking about that there is some disconnect also, and people would love to get bonded over this and gain more insights from such exposures. Yeah.
Yep. Let's all go back and take more patents in AI.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Great,
Thank you,
man.
everyone.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you. Okay. I would like to remind again, project task deadline has been extended till 5 p.m. So submit the projects as soon as possible to gap the points. Now it's time for the quiz. So the link is in the chat box as well as it is shared in the WhatsApp group. Try to score max to get in top of the leaderboard and get a chance to win exciting batches and goodies.